All right, let's all gather our thoughts. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. How's everybody doing today? How's everybody doing today? How's everybody doing today? Amen. Glory be to God for allowing us to gather here today. So it is the last week of the series. Bittersweet. Um, it's bitter because, it's the last week. It's sweet because, I get a little break after this. But either way, I hope everybody was able to learn something from this series, truly from the bottom of my heart. Like, the purpose of this series was, if you remember, around the first week of the series and the climate and the social climate and what was happening on media and stuff, we saw like this boom or this uprising of what we call apologetics, what we call people debating the faith or defending the faith, right? We saw many people within the Ethiopian and Eritrean Orthodox community, make videos regarding different things, defending their faith, and all these kind of things. This was kind of the new wave, essentially, right? I don't know if y'all are on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but I've heard that there's a lot of TikTok debates that people do, right? And nowadays everybody's a debater and all these kind of things. And so that's kind of the context in which we decided to do this series. Um, because it's important to have a reason to defend your faith, as St. Peter says, right? He says, give a reason for the hope that you have. Always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have. There's no worse feeling than somebody questioning the hope that you have, right? The hope in Christ that you have, and you don't know what to say, right? But you're like, but the Bible says this, and you're like, I don't believe in the Bible. Prove it to me. And you don't know what to say. You're frozen. You know you have hope in Christ, but you don't know how to defend it, right? And so it's really important to know these things. It's not, as I said many times before, sufficient to know these things. We're not saved by knowledge. We're not saved by our theology. We're not saved by our ability to defend the faith. We're not saved by our apologetics, right? We're saved by living as Christ lived, right? We're saved by following his commandments. We're saved by being transformed into his image and likeness, right? That's what we're saved by. So this series is not meant to be, a transformative series necessarily in the sense of becoming like Christ, but it's more of how can I defend my faith practically? How can I give a reason for the hope that I have, right? And so I'm not going to go over every week, obviously, but I hope everybody has time to go through it, and we'll be able to, catch up and, go over all the points that we talked about, because we tackled so many things, right? Before we even started the series, we are like, how do we know God exists? That's the very basic basis, right? How can he prove God exists? Beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the series, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm not saying that people don't have alternative arguments. What I'm saying, my whole point is the Christian argument is the best argument. It's the argument that has the most, that fits most with reality, right? And I've given you guys so many pieces of evidence for that. All the whole time, I haven't been, giving you just like my opinion on things. I've tried to rationalize and reason with everybody, right? So we figured out, does God exist? Yes, God exists. Then we narrowed it down to three different religions, if you will, right? Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And you might be saying, but there's hundreds of different world religions. Go back to week 2 to figure out why we narrowed it down to 3, logically, right? We narrowed it down to that. Then we said, okay, these 3 religions make sense. Let's open up the books. And before we open up the books that these 3 religions claim as their authority, let's see if they're trustworthy, right? Let's see if they're reliable, if they're credible. Can you trust what's written in there? And we found that the Bible is one of the most trustworthy historical documents in human history, right? Like they recently found, like 50 years ago, what we call like the Dead Sea Scrolls as one example. And it's dated thousands of years old. And it has many of the different Old Testament scriptures in it. And they found that it was 95% accurate to what was found thousands of years ago, right? They read it, and I mean, not what they found thousands, they read it, right? And this is dated thousands of years ago. They compared it to what we have today, and they found it to be 95% accurate. And you might be saying, okay, but that's 5% difference. The difference is in punctuation. The difference is in like punctuation or like a word here or there. But there's no difference in theological or meaning or the essence of the message. It's identical to how it was thousands of years ago. So this notion that people may say to you, oh, the Bible has been corrupted, that's just false. There's no evidence for that, right? That's just like what kids call it rage bait, right? That it's not true. The Bible has much evidence, and it's very accurate. In fact, when you compare it to other historical documents around the time, I gave you the example of Alexander the Great, right? They don't have any records of him till thousands of, like hundreds of years after him, like to talk about his life and what he did. But in the Bible, we have like almost immediate accounts on the person of Christ. It has very early testimony. Multiple people testified about it, right? It has all these things that make it very trustworthy. And so we're like, okay, we could trust it. What can we see, or what can we extract from it? We opened it up and it said Christ himself claimed to be God, right? Christ himself claimed to be God. And then we looked even deeper. What are some other facts that we can find? What were the 3 facts that we analyzed? The first fact was what? Help me out here. What was the first fact? The tomb was, okay, not an opinion, not speculation. The tomb was empty. You know what was crazy? You can Google who the most popular person in human history is, right? It's going to be Christ, or the most like controversial or famous person. This person is the most famous person in human history. Yet after 2,000 years, people don't know where his remains are. They don't know where his bones would be or his body would be. Why? Well, obviously we believe he resurrected, but the tomb was empty, right? That the tomb wasn't empty when people were preaching Christ was resurrected. The opponents of Christianity would say, no, he's not. Let's show you the body. But nobody ever did that. There's no historical records of anybody bringing forth the body of Christ after his crucifixion and saying, no, he didn't resurrect. He's still dead. No reports of that. So the fact is, the tomb was empty. And the second fact is, people claimed they saw him after his crucifixion. And the third fact is, Christianity exponentially grew shortly after his crucifixion. What is the best explanation for those 3 facts? We looked at different theories. The first theory that we looked at, I believe, was the conspiracy theory. It's all a conspiracy. Like Peter and Paul and the apostles, they got together after Christ died and orchestrated this huge conspiracy to fool people into Christ resurrecting. And that's flawed in many different ways. To pull off a conspiracy that big, you would need coordination. Right? Because it said Christ appeared to hundreds and thousands of people, right? So there would be coordination needed to pull off such a thing. Not even that. If you're going to pull off a conspiracy, the last conspiracy you would pull off is to say Christ resurrected. Because for them, they don't even have that concept in their brains of somebody resurrecting prior to Judgment Day. So that's the last thing they would lie about. And also, why would they even pull that conspiracy off? What did they gain from this conspiracy, this lie? They died from it. At the very least, okay, maybe they started off as a conspiracy, but once they started to get caught up, they would probably lie. They would not lie. They would probably say, oh, it's a joke. It's a lie. It's a conspiracy. You caught us. Don't kill us, please. Spare my family. Yet we see instead they died. You don't die for a conspiracy. You don't die for a lie, something you don't believe it's true. Right? Another theory that people have is that Christ somehow, survived the crucifixion. And I told you guys, the Romans were experts in suffering, anatomy, and getting people to go through all this pain. Nobody survived the crucifixion. In fact, through all the research that I could do, I only found one person that survived the crucifixion. And that's because he received medical attention immediately after. Right? So extremely improbable that he survived the crucifixion and then rolled the rock over to leave the tomb. And then even if he did that, why would his disciples look at him covered in blood, barely able to move, and say, he's God? That's not their Jewish understanding of who God would be. God is mighty. God is the one who's going to overthrow the Romans, not somebody on the floor half dead. They wouldn't say, this is God. They would say, we need to help this man. So that theory doesn't make sense either. And we went over other theories. You can look back at it. However, I gave you guys this at the end. Those theories aren't really, atheists don't really apply those theories anymore because they're so ridiculous, right? These are real theories, by the way, that different scholars, like hundreds of years ago, like atheists, not hundreds, like 19th century sometime, atheists proposed these theories. And over time, most atheists now will say, those don't have much evidence for it. We agree. The reason why a lot of people are atheists today is because of the problem of evil and suffering. If God is loving, explain to me why there's evil, why there's suffering in the world. And then it becomes this emotional thing. And we'll talk about that in great detail in a second. I'm going to table that, put that on the side, okay? Are we still missing one theory to explain those three facts? The empty tomb, people claiming they saw Christ, and then the growth of Christianity. There's one more theory. And that theory is actually not a theory, it's a story. It's the resurrection story. The resurrection story. To understand and appreciate the story, we got to go back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, right? Where Adam and Eve were created in the image and likeness of God. And we know kind of what ended up happening. Our church fathers teach us that they were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years before they fell to sin. 7 years. And so I like to play, psychologist when I read the Bible. I like to put myself in their shoes. What were Adam and Eve thinking when they ate, we'll call it an apple for today? What were they thinking? I know some people, they always joke around like, if Adam and Eve just never ate that apple, I wouldn't have to take this exam right now. Like people used to joke like that and talk like that. Like if I was there back then, like I wouldn't have done it. Like what's wrong with them? Like God is clearly there. Like, God made everything for them. And like, how would they just like fall for one apple, for one tree? But the Bible is a story about you. Adam and Eve is you. I told you, how long did I say they were in the garden before they sinned, according to our church fathers? 7 years. Raise your hand if you went 7 years without sin. Yes, 7 months? Any takers? All right, no. 7 minutes. Come on, somebody, anybody out there? We haven't even been here. So y'all sinned in the last 7 minutes you were in the church? But it's true. Right? They lived virtuously for a long time, and they fell. Why did they fall? A couple things. So many things actually we can go on. But I will say a couple things here. One is a lack of watchfulness. They got comfortable. Think about it. They're chilling in the garden. They're eating out not the apple tree. That's the bad tree for this class purposes. They're eating out like the mango tree, the banana tree, all these trees. Like, man, like I'm tired of eating mangoes and bananas all the time. Like, let me get this thing, like this intrigue of like, what is this mystery here? Right? They got complacent, they got comfortable. And they allowed room for temptation. They allowed room for the enemy to come into their ears and put it, just, all the enemy needs is just you to change your mind. Did God really mean it when he said you'll die if you eat of this apple? Surely you won't die. You'll become just like him if you eat it. Oh, really? Huh. Interesting. And that's all the enemy needs, just for you to say, interesting. For you just to give it a thought. But if you're watchful, what does it mean to be watchful? To be on guard, to always be looking out. St. Peter describes it as this: be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. We don't live in a world where, there's unseen things here. There's unseen forces, unseen evil, demonic beings. This is not like a fairy tale that I'm telling you. This is the truth. And their main goal for you in your life is for you to be destroyed. It's not for you to feel sad. It's not for you to feel, whatever. It's for you to be destroyed. The devil does not stop till you're destroyed. He overwhelms you with many different things. He gets you to hate yourself. He gets you to, be so disgusted with yourself, to isolate yourself, and then he gets you to destroy yourself. That is his goal. To prevent that from happening, you have to be sober, be vigilant, watchful for the tricks of the enemy, watchful for the traps of the enemy. And for a while, they lost their spot in the kingdom of heaven. They were there. They were in paradise. And for a while, because of their lack of watchfulness, they lost their spot in line. They lost their spot in paradise. True story. A couple years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, there was a a famous basketball player coming into town, okay? It's LeBron James or something. I'm not a big fan. But anywho, he was coming into town. And he was, when he was announced he was coming to town, everybody was going crazy, right? Like people would camp out 24 hours before, literally, right? Because they wanted to get in line. They wanted to get in line. They wanted to get inside. And so me and my friends were like, okay, we're going to do this thing. We're going to go 24 hours in advance. And we had a whole game plan, right? And by the way, it was crazy. People bought like chairs. People bought barbecue grills to like make food, like in the parking lot. People brought basketball hoops to like play basketball outside while they're waiting in line. It was crazy. And so me and my friends, we decided to do shifts. Take shifts, right? You do the morning watch, just in case they open the door. You do the midnight watch, whatever. And we did that, right? Taking turns. And then somebody opens the door. And that whole line just like scattered. Everybody crowds against the door. And the guard is like, no, we're not opening yet. Like, y'all need to be on line. But nobody's listening, right? And at that point, there is no line. The people that fell asleep lost their spot, even though they were there for so long, right? The people that just switched shifts, they lost their spot. There was no longer a line. Luckily, I was able to get it. I did get it. I got my pictures. I got everything. I'm good. The memory is there. Not a fan, but anywho, I got my chance in there. I was there. But it required a level of watchfulness to get in. It's the same thing with the kingdom of heaven. Without a level of watchfulness, you cannot enter the kingdom. Just like how we were so desperate to see a basketball player play, and we wouldn't let anybody get in the way of that, you have to be desperate about your salvation to not let anything or anybody get in the way of that. Not a person, not a soul can take you away from line to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's what you have to be. That's what watchfulness is. The devil tells you, you had a long day, long week of school, long week of work. You need to take Saturday and Sunday off to relax and recharge for the week. Sunday is always going to be there. You got church next time. You need this weekend to yourself. When you hear that, you say, no, I need to be watchful. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I need to stop. I need to go to church. That's how I recharge. My soul needs something. You're about to read the Bible. You're like, okay, today at 6 p.m., I'm going to read my Bible. And then you forgot it's Thursday night football and the game's on. I'm speaking about myself. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to watch after football. Then it's 9 p.m. I'm tired. Tomorrow morning I'll do it. In those moments, you say, no, I need to do it now. I need to be watchful. It says Christ is going to come like a thief in the night. How does a thief come into your house? When you least expect it. Christ is going to come when you least expect it. I ought to be watchful at all times. I can't let anything take me out of line. We're in this world in line to enter the kingdom of heaven. But there are things that we can do to get out of line. And a lot of times, once you get out of line, it's very hard to get back in line. Once you lose that connection with God, once you lose that energy that you had, it's hard to get it back. So you have to be watchful. You have to be watchful. And you think about it, right? Like when you read the Bible, this is what I always say. It's like, has so many different stories of what not to be like, right? It has the stories of actual people and how they made a mistake. And it's written there for you so you don't make that same mistake. David, one moment of relaxation. Let me just chill. They're at war. Let me, sleep in. That moment of relaxation, that moment of not being watchful, led him to sleep with somebody else's wife. And ever since then, he was never a king in the same way again. He was a fugitive, essentially running away from his own son. The devil, you see how quick he works? One moment of not being watchful. I can drink this weekend. We're on vacation. I can drink a little bit. I can go to the club. Nobody's going to see me in the club. I could do this. I'm out of the country, whatever. That's all the enemy needs to erase months of spiritual struggle that you did. He can erase it all just like that. And then it boils down to how bad are you seeking Christ? The sad truth is Christianity and comfortability cannot coexist. They cannot. And we want it to so bad, especially in the West. Growing up here, I'm guilty here. I want to church at, 9 a.m. Anyway, let me not go there. Anyways, But this is a big thing. Christianity and comfortability cannot coexist. Why? The flesh and the soul are constantly at war with each other. Comfortability is for the flesh. Sleep, eat, be merry. That's the flesh. When you're boosting your flesh, guess what else is decreasing? Your spirit, your soul. We have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And once you're comfortable with that, you will see how purified you will be, how out of this world you will be. Like Christ said, you are not of this world. You're not of this world. Yes, people, they love to, relax on the weekends and party and turn up and all this. You're not of the world, though. That's them, but you're different. You don't find your rest in the club. You find your rest in me. You don't find your rest in the drugs and alcohol. You find your rest in me. You're different. Another thing that I noticed from Adam and Eve that I feel like they were lacking is gratefulness. All these things around them. The Lord gave them dominion to name the animals. They were in charge of everything. And instead of being grateful about that, they focused on the one thing that they didn't have. Is that not us? If we knew how much we had, we wouldn't think about anything we don't have. Like, we would be so content. We have all this health, yet we're complaining about not having a husband or a wife. We have a high-paying job, yet we're complaining about something else. We find always something to complain about. That's what Adam and Eve did. Rather, let's do this thought experiment, right? Let's say tomorrow, the only things you had when you wake up are the things you thanked God for today. What would you have tomorrow? If you didn't thank God once for anything today, tomorrow you would have nothing. You see how scary that would be? God has given us so much daily. Yet we focus on the things that we don't have, and that takes our attention. So St. Paul says, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Everybody's like, what's the will of God? What's the will of God? What's the will of God? Give thanks in all circumstances. Because if you give thanks in all circumstances, you're always grateful. You're always content in Christ. There's nothing else that you're seeking because you know Christ has provided. You see, when we talk about will of God, it's very materialistic. I need, God, what's your will for me and for this house I'm about to buy or this car? And it's good to seek his will and everything, but his will is deeper than a material thing that you purchase. His will is that you reconcile with him, that you thank him, that you're grateful for what you have. Be grateful for everything so you will always lack nothing. Be grateful for everything so that you will always lack nothing. So this attitude of lack of watchfulness, just being late, being comfortable, and this attitude of not being grateful, it led Adam and Eve to fall into sin. What is sin again? What is sin? We've talked about this many times. Some people say separation from God. Some people say missing the mark. It's a lot of things, but we could talk about that. That's a whole series on its own. Sin is literally you denying the mercy, the goodness, the fatherhood of God and picking a different master. Let's call it what it is. You are saying no to God for his love, for his mercy, for his father, and you saying this other thing is more pleasing to me than you are right now, Lord. That's what it is. And that's what Christ understood Adam and Eve's sin to be. It's not that they ate an apple. Who cares about the apple? Christ actually, even after they ate, he said, where are you? Doesn't God know everything? He asked, where are you for them to repent? Because it's not about the apple. Yet what did they do? They hid. What did they do after Christ found them? Adam said, it's the woman you gave me. Eve said, it's the snake that was here. Isn't that what we do when we sin? When we sin, we hide. First step, I got to avoid God. I got to avoid church. I got to avoid prayer. And then when you want to come to terms with it, you're so scared about looking inwards, you blame your other external factors. My friends, my family, my school, my work. Lack of accountability, just like Adam and Eve. You see, you can't walk away from God. Just like he found Adam and Eve, he's going to find you. Is he going to find you on the floor hiding? Or is he going to find you standing asking for mercy? He's going to find you. You cannot run from God. However, you can submit to a different God, though. Whether you submit to God, the one we're worshiping, or not, you're going to find something to submit to. Right? Many people walking around, money is their God. They wake up daily. How can I get money? They go to sleep. How did I lose this much money? They wake up. What else can I do for more money? Huh? Money is your God. If that's all you're thinking about, that's your God. You've chosen to submit to God, that money as your God. Right? Social media is the biggest one. One of the biggest ones. We submit to whatever social media tells us. You know, this is one of the things, like I've mentioned before. I really hope one of the things you take away from this series is to challenge things. Don't just listen to what the next charismatic person says on Instagram. The person who speaks the best. Challenge it. Assess if it's true. Don't just listen to the people who you think align with your beliefs. Why does that matter what your beliefs are? Isn't everything supposed to be Christ-centered? We talked about morality and how there's objective morals. There's an objective good and an objective bad. How do we know what's objectively good? Good means good for Christ, good for God. That should be the way you measure everything. Not based off of the politician you like, not based off of the Instagram accounts you follow. It's what is good for God. That should be where your morals are. But we let social media mold us and beat at us and crumble our identity down. And so we have this hybrid of Christianity, but then we mix it with secularism, and that's not what we're supposed to do. Adam and Eve, they denied God and chose to submit to the will of the devil. That is the truth. And they allowed the devil to become their king. Now, that's how it started. But we know after that, that's not how it ended. And that's why we honor Adam and Eve. Because they spent the rest of their lives repenting, begging God for mercy, being watchful, being grateful. You see, it's not about how you sin. It's what you do to get back up. What do you correct after that? How desperate are you for Christ's love, for his mercy? What are you willing to do? That's what matters. Christ is not surprised when you sin. He's surprised when you don't get back up. In the book of Isaiah, he says, surely you will fall, but will you not get back up? Question mark. For God, it's a question. It's puzzling to him. Why do you not get back up? I know you're going to fall. Why do you not get back up? That's why when Adam and Eve ate the apple, he said, where are you? He didn't say, why did you do this? He didn't say, how dare you do this? Where are you? Lord, I have fallen. That's what he looks for. When you sin, those words need to ring in your ear. Where are you? That's what God is saying every time. And your job is to say, Lord, here I am. I have sinned. But after this, he gives them a covenant, a promise, saying, I will come to save you guys. You will not be in this state forever. I will renew you. Right? And so he sends Moses, and Moses brings the 10 commandments, and the people, they couldn't obey the 10 commandments, right? And actually the rule was, when they had the 10 commandments or the covenant agreement, it was whoever, they had to follow the commandments. And in return, God would always protect them. That's what it was, right? Obviously, they didn't follow the commandments. So what's the consequence? The consequence was whoever doesn't hold their end of the bargain, meaning if God doesn't protect them, or if they don't obey the commandments, whoever breaks it, they will die. Surely, human beings are the ones who broke their covenant, right? And so, what's the punishment? What's the punishment? We ought to die. We ought to be, I'm not talking about dying, I'm talking about permanent separation from God. That would be the punishment. But then even after that, Christ sends prophecies, he sends prophets, he sends reminders saying, no, I'm still going to come, I'm still going to come. And it's interesting because the Jews, They had all these scriptures to them, yet they didn't notice that it was Christ. Like, look at this. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircle me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots out for my garment. Who's this talking about? Who's this talking about? Say it, please. Jesus Christ. Is Psalms in the Old Testament or New Testament? Old Testament, prior to Christ. They had access to these scriptures, yet they did not see Christ in this. And so there's many of these different prophecies that are supposed to indicate or help people identify when Christ is about to come. And so I want to go to this question for you guys. And I've asked this before. Why couldn't Christ just stop at Adam and Eve and just forgive them? Okay, you're good, it's fine, just forget it. Right? Why did he have to come and die? Why? I kind of spoiled it earlier. Right? There's this thing called the divine dilemma that St. Athanasius talks about. Right? If God is loving, which he is, he can't just let his people die. Yes, they did evil. And yes, their punishment should be death. But if he's loving, he can't let them die. However, he did say, if you do this sin, you will die. So if he doesn't let them die, did God lie? Are you guys with me? So if he lets them die, his love may be questioned. If he doesn't let them die, his integrity and honesty may be questioned. So to reconcile these, what's the only thing that could have been done? For Christ, God, for God to become a human and die on behalf of humans, to show he's loving and to show, yes, a human, a God-man had to pay the price. Are you guys with me? So it was necessary. He had to do it. But when he came into this world, people didn't recognize him. One of the most chilling things that we see in John chapter 1, verse 10, he was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. And the world did not know him. That is what sin does to you. When you live a life separate from God, you no longer recognize Christ. You no longer recognize who God is. Instead, you think you're worshiping God, but you're actually worshiping this made-up God in your brain. And they were unable to recognize him. You see, today, we're very similar to the Jews back then. The Jews were very proud. We're Jews. We're sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We'll be saved. But they didn't recognize Christ. And it's the same thing with us today. We call ourselves Christians. We call ourselves Orthodox Tohara. We say we're his children. We say we're his people. Yet we live completely contrary to that. Our Father and our Lord and our Creator and our Master, he says, you're the light of the world. Yet we are lights to nobody. You're the salt of the earth, yet you bring no flavor to this world. We're called as his ambassadors. He calls us his body. We're his hands, his feet, his eyes. Yet we lead nobody to him. In fact, we lead people away from him. Yet we say, I'm Orthodox. I'm Christian. A Christian is someone who follows Christ and who imitates Christ. St. Paul himself said, imitate me because I imitate Christ. Yet very few of us are willing to do that. You know, we call ourselves Christians, but is that what Christ would say about you? Is he going to say, yes, he's a follower of me. Yes, he resembles me. Yes, she does exactly how I would have done things. Would that be the case? But here's the thing. That's not where it stops. God understands that. And so all he looks for is not a perfect person. It's not for someone to exactly replicate. What does it mean to replicate Christ? Does it mean to be sinless? Does it mean to be without sin? That's the goal. But he knows we can't do that. So it means to change our mindset. He says, be holy for I'm holy. Be perfect for your Father in heaven is perfect. What does that mean? A perfect mindset. A mindset of if I sin, I'm going to get back up to my Lord through his grace. I will do everything in my power to struggle until bloodshed, as St. Paul said, to pluck out my eye that causes me to sin, as Christ said. I will do everything in my power to imitate Christ. Why? Because he died for me. We love him because he loved us first, is what John says. Right? Why do you think these people we're talking about all died for him? Why do you think Paul and John and Peter and Andrew and James, all of them died for him? Love. They knew how much he loved them, how much he was willing to work with a bunch of fishermen, a bunch of uneducated, low-class people, showing them love that nobody else showed them love. That transformed them into saying, I'm going to die for this person. Without a second thought, I will do it. And unfortunately, we have refused to accept that type of love for ourselves, because if we did, we would have been changed. But we've chosen to love darkness more. And so this is what the Bible claims happened to Jesus Christ, that he resurrected from the dead, that he ascended into heaven, that he defeated death, that he freed everybody from Hades and brought them back up to heaven. So if that is true, that would explain the empty tomb. That would explain people saying they saw him after he died. That would explain the origin of the Christian faith. Is this story realistic? Now some of y'all maybe, all right, bro, like Adam and Eve, a talking snake. Come on, what are we talking about here? What are we doing? Is this story true? Well, let's break it down. We confirmed God exists. Go back to week 1. We confirm beyond a reasonable doubt that evidence points to a God, a creator, an intelligent mind exists. That is beyond space, that is beyond time, that is beyond matter, exists. We concluded that. We concluded that the Bible is reliable. We concluded that it is reliable. As a historical document, it is reliable. And so we opened it up and it said the Bible said Christ is God. And we fact-checked that. It's confirmed through fulfillment of prophecies. I showed you a prophecy in Psalms that said they pierced his hands. He fulfilled that prophecy. He was born of a virgin, like it was prophesied in Isaiah. Confirmed by miraculous deeds. Many people testified that he did many miracle things, miraculous things. Confirmed by his prediction and accomplishment of a resurrection. And so, I said this last week in my discussion group. You don't have to convince somebody that Moses split the Red Sea. You don't have to convince somebody that the snake was talking to people, whatever that means. If you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Christ died and resurrected, beyond a reasonable doubt, if you can prove that with all the evidence, then anything else in the Bible is easy to happen. Anything else is easy. So don't get caught up in these arguments, oh, you believe in the talking snake. No. Focus on the person of Christ, because we have a common understanding there. Everybody agrees Christ existed. Everybody exists Christ was crucified. The 3 facts, the tomb was empty. People claim they saw him, and Christianity grew. That should be your basis of your argument. And if all of that is possible, parting the Red Sea is easy. Somebody in a whale for 3 days and 3 nights, easy. You see, the world, they make fun of us because they don't think we have this understanding. And the truth is, none of us have had this understanding. None of us have been able to combat and say this, and actually defend our faith. Even more than that, none of us have been transformed by our faith enough to even entice people, giving us the benefit of the doubt. A lot of us, we don't resemble Christ. Christ, one thing he brought for certain? Curiosity. We don't live curious lives. We live blended in with everybody else. We don't make anybody want to question, why are you so kind? Why are you so polite? Why are you so loving? How are you still at work after, you got that terrible news last night? How are you here? We don't have anything to testify that we're Christians. And so the people, the world, they make fun of us. They think we have blind faith. Here's the thing. Let me give you an example here. If I told you, if you were to lock in for 1 year and follow this set of steps that I have for you, I guarantee you'll be a millionaire. Guaranteed, 100%. Raise your hand if you do it. The people not raising their hands are millionaires already, I guess. But everybody would do it, right? Lock in for a year, you'll be a millionaire, guaranteed. If I told you there's a way I could give you a plan for 1 year that you are guaranteed to become closer to Christ, would you take it? And that's the issue. That's the difference. Our focus is altered because we know what that 1 year plan looks like. We know what we need to do to get closer to Christ. Yet that just doesn't motivate us for whatever reason. And we can get into that another time. So, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I condensed it into 10 weeks. We could have done 52 weeks. I'm so serious. There's so much evidence for Christianity. This is the tip of the iceberg. I just want you guys to understand our faith in God isn't out of nowhere. Our job is to live a life worthy of the calling that He called us to. The standard Christ set for us is something He called us to because He believes we can do it because we're in His image. Don't lower yourself. Don't say, I can't do it. Christ created you in His image, saying you can do it. In me, through me, with me, you could do it. Yet we say, it's not for me. No, your Father in heaven said it is for you. So like I said, this story explains the empty tomb. It explains people claiming they saw Christ and explains the origin of the Christian faith. Now, I have to go to my first point real quick. Like I said, the issue of faith is not an evidence thing anymore. I used to think it was. I used to think, people just, don't really know the evidence for Christianity. I think that's part of it. But I think it's deeper. I think it has to do with this question. How could a loving God allow people to suffer? I think everybody in their hearts at a moment in their lives had prayed, right? An atheist person, I guarantee you, if their mom was sick on their deathbed, they're going to say, God, if you're real, please do something. At our core, we're very desperate. Human beings are very desperate people because we know things are out of our control. I guarantee you, most people, 99% of people who are capable have done a prayer before. God, if you exist, at the very least. And the reason why a lot of people are atheists is because in that moment, they never got an answer. And they experienced suffering. And it became easy to say, there is no way God exists because He's allowing me to go through this pain. And even if that God exists, I refuse to believe in Him because I'm in so much pain. I'm in so much sadness. In fact, the famous atheist Alex O'Connor, this is like his whole talking point. Most modern atheists, like I said, they're not going to go into the points I brought up. Those are kind of old. This is it that they focus on. And it's an emotional problem. It's like really hard to address. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to give you all an answer for this. I don't think anybody can. I think we can give ideas and we can talk about, the personhood of Christ and how this fits in, but nobody really knows for certain why these things happen. But my goal is to at least change your perspective on what suffering is not, what evil is not, etc., etc. So that's what we're going to go into. We have some time. Are y'all with me? Everybody good? Everybody good? Perfect. John chapter 9, verse 1 through 3. Now, as Jesus passed by, He saw a man who was blind from birth, and His disciples asked Him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. It used to be thought back then, any type of suffering was a result of your sin. If you're remember Job, when he was suffering, his friends were like, what did you do, Job? You must have done something wrong. It's your sin. You've invoked the wrath of God. Something's wrong. This was the common thought. Is that not our thought? When we're going through some type of something, what did I do, God, to upset you? Did I do something? It's because I didn't fast on Wednesday. I ate the McChicken. That's what it was. That's what we say. But that's not how God is. We think this way, but that's not how God is. When we go through hardships, we think of it as a punishment. When someone goes through a hardship, we say, that person actually, they never went to church. I know them. They never go to church. God's just trying to correct them. God is just trying to guide them back to church. That's how we kind of justify it, And it's the opposite is true too. When things are going good in our lives, we say, we're blessed. I got a job, I'm blessed. I got money, I'm blessed. It is a blessing. But are you saying not having a job would mean you're not blessed? Are you saying not having money means you're not blessed? You see, we have a very distorted image of what a blessing is and what suffering is, right? This suggests that God blesses us when we're good and he punishes us when we're bad. This very distorted. Like even when I say it, it should kind of not make sense to you. Like God only punishes or rewards me when I'm good, blesses me when I'm good, but punishes me when I'm bad. That sounds like human beings. That sounds like us. You do something bad to me, I'm gonna get you back. You think God deals with us the same way we deal with each other? I don't think so. Because they crucified him, yet he said, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. So I don't think that is what God does. And so he actually, in this story, you see them, they're saying, okay, this person, he's born blind. Especially if you were born with like some type of a illness or some sickness, they would think it's your parents' sin or your sin, but they're like, okay, he was born this way, how could it be his sin? And so they ask Christ, who's sinned? Who sinned? This is our question all the time. Who sinned? Did I sin? And he says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. That's the answer to the question. It's not a matter of who sinned, who did what. That's not what our focus should be. It's the focus should be in any suffering in this world, God will turn it to good. I'm not saying this person was born blind for this specific purpose, for this specific instance, for Christ to put on a show and say, aha, watch me heal him. That's not what I'm saying here. But Christ, he turns things to good. He doesn't bring suffering into your life, but that suffering he turns into good. I'm going to go through a couple misconceptions. Misconception number one, God punishes our sin with suffering. God punishes our sin with suffering. That's a big, big misconception. You know, people will say this, like they think God makes them suffer for a purpose. God, like he's suffering for a purpose. Like God made him suffer for a purpose. That's so beneath God. That's so beneath God. You know what the word like sadistic means? Like when you get pleasure from other people's suffering? Like God, because he wants to see you do a greater thing, he's going to make you suffer some more. Really? That's not what it does. That's not what God does. Don't get me wrong. You do go through, when you go through difficult times, you do grow. Absolutely. When you go through hardships, you absolutely grow. But it is not God who intentionally makes you suffer to do that. He absolutely does not do it. You're his child. You know, us, if we see somebody, a parent, like forcing his kid to eat vegetables, right? And the kid is sobbing, I don't want to eat it, I'm full. And the parent's like, no, you're going to eat it, it's for your own good. You're going to be in there like saying, like, this is wild. The kid is crying, snot's coming out of his nose, this is not fair. Just let the kid off the hook. But we think God does that to us? No, he needs to suffer because it's good for him, it's for his benefit, it's for her benefit. She will. No, he does not make you suffer for anything. He does not want you to suffer. But you do grow through sufferings. Right? I have a question for y'all. Is blindness, being blind, evil? Being born blind, is that evil? Okay. Was COVID evil? Was COVID evil? I see some yeses. I see some no's. Can a virus be evil? Can a virus have any trait that makes it evil? I'm not saying it didn't cause suffering. It did. I'm talking about, is it in itself evil? And the answer is no. Being blind is not an evil. COVID is not an evil. You know, we live in the West where we have this perfect image. I need perfect health. I need perfect wealth. I need everything. And any inconvenience is that evil, evil, evil. But it's not an evil. What is evil? How do you define evil? It's the absence of good. Evil is the absence of good or the corruption of good. A virus has nothing to do with that. A virus, it just is. And what do we mean by good? I said it earlier. Good is what? Good is good for who? God. And evil is that distorting of that. A virus has nothing to do, it's just a part of the world. It's just there. It causes suffering, but it is not evil. John Chrysostom talks about this. He said sin alone is evil, but blindness is not evil when he was talking about this gospel. Blindness, sickness, virus, it's not evil. Sin alone is evil. The other things, they're just a part of this world. I'll talk about that in a second. Misconception number 2. I know some of y'all love this one. God brings suffering to those that he loves. And you know, I used to believe this, and it would make me feel good. It would make me rationalize my suffering. This is painful. He loves me, though. He loves me a lot, actually. He must love me the most for what I'm going through right now. But there's actually, I'll never forget the story. I was listening to a talk, and this person, he was driving his mom and his siblings somewhere, and they get in a car accident. His mom and his siblings pass away. He survived. Okay? And he's Orthodox. And he goes to his priest, and he's like, you know, people keep telling me God brings suffering to the one that he loves, and he must love me a lot. And the priest, as he's doing this talk, he said he's cringing on the inside. He's like, I don't want to tell him that's wrong, because if he's clinging to that as hope, like, I don't want to ruin it for him. And then the person continues. He's like, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't feel loved. I feel pain. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I miss my mom. I miss my siblings. And that's the truth. It's actually when you break it down, suffering, God would never bring that on you. He would never bring that on you. We say in the book of Revelation, God wipes away every tear, yet he's the reason why we cry. No, it can't be. The same person who died in our place when it should have been us. Why would he want us to suffer now if he didn't let us suffer then in eternity? Why would he cause someone to suffer? That's not what he does. But what he does do is the suffering. It's not sent by God. Yet those who endure it faithfully are favored by him. You see the difference? There is a world of difference in this. God makes the ones he loves suffer. It's wrong. This is the truth. Suffering isn't sent by God. Yet those who endure it faithfully are favored by him. Abraham, he suffered a lot. He lost his family. Yet he was called the friend of God. David suffered a lot. And God was with him, and he favored him and called him a man after my heart. But God did not bring that suffering into their lives. It's due to the fallen world. But he favors those who endure it faithfully. There's a world of difference there. Kind of similar. We kind of just talked about this. God brings suffering to bring us closer to him. That's not true either. Again, the bottom line is God does not want you to suffer. God is not the author of evil. The book of James tells us that. God does not inflict evil on anybody. He doesn't do that. God, however, and this is where we're going to get in the weeds, allows evil because of our free will. This is where it all boils down to, is free will. What is God? What do we call God? What is one word we call him? God is? That didn't do what I wanted it to do. God is love. Right? So what the scriptures tells us. God has many things, but he's love. Love requires participation. Love requires a choice. He can't be love if he doesn't give us the choice to receive his love. So he gave us free will to allow us to accept the love or reject the love. Because if he forces his love on us, we're just robots. We're just puppets. So because he's love, the only thing he could do to reconcile love is give us the free will to accept it. And unfortunately, rather than use that free will to accept it, we use that free will to bring evil into the world, to kill people, to do horrible crimes. But like I said, in the midst, if you read the Bible, actually, it's filled with that. Evil, 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 God turns it to good. That's the pattern of the world. There's a psychologist or something, what's his name, Peterson, Jordan Peterson, right? He talks about patterns a lot. And it's true. The pattern of the world is crucifixion to resurrection. Like anything in the world, it's like you see suffering, but then it becomes good later. And that's what Christ does with your suffering. He doesn't bring your suffering onto you, but he turns your suffering into good. The crucifixion, that's a tragedy. An innocent man dying on behalf of people that were supposed to die. That's a tragedy. Yet he turned it into a resurrection, right? Persecution in the early church. Hundreds, thousands of Christians in the early church were being killed. But what did that do? He turned it to good. Millions converted, right? Even relationships on a more lighter note, right? You go through a heartbreak. It hurts. It's painful. But you become a better husband. You become a better wife in the future. You become more selfless. You see the pattern? In school, you suffer through school. Oh, it's so hard. It's so stressful. Sleepless nights. But then you get that degree and you get a job. You see? Anything in the world, Christ has designed it this way. It has this pattern. He will turn your suffering into good because he cannot bear to watch you suffer. Yet we say he sends it to us. He gives it now. He can't bear to watch you suffer. This is the reality. Whether you're righteous or not, suffering comes to everybody. That's the world we live in. That's the reality. That's the truth. This is the fallen world we live in. I have a question for you guys. If God didn't give us free will, would the world be a better place? If God didn't give us free will, would the world be a better place? If God only made us be all the same uniform way, have to behave a certain way with no choice, would the world be a better place? Raise your hand if you say yes. I see some people saying yeah. Raise your hand if you say no. I'm really curious to see why y'all are saying that. Maybe in the discussion group we could talk about that. Not the people who did it, all y'all. I'm curious as to why that is. Let me give you this analogy. Actually, let me ask you this question. Could you have a successful relationship with any AI model of your choice? It could be Grok, it could be ChatGPT, it could whatever your style is, your taste, your type, right? Could you have a successful relationship with it? Anybody? Somebody has their hand up. No, I'm just joking. Nobody? Why? Because you know it's not real. Because you know it's not a real person. Because you know it's not a real choice for that person. You can design the perfect model to tell you everything you need to hear. You look good, you look this, and whatever. Anything you want, you can design it to do that. But it won't mean anything because you know that thing did not have a choice. It's a robot. Free will gives us meaning. Without free will, there wouldn't be any bravery. There would be no virtue. There would be no love. It takes a choice to love. It takes a choice to act brave and save somebody's life. If we didn't have that, it would be bland. There would be nothing to be praised. We're robots. Just like you wouldn't accept the love of an AI model, just like you wouldn't accept that, it would be the same thing if God didn't give us free will. If he made us operate the same way. There is no virtue, there's no choice, there's nothing to praise about us. We are just programmed to do what we're doing. So free will, you know when God created us, when he created the trees, what did he say? It is what? Good. When he created the waters, he said it is good. When he created human beings, what did he call it? Very good. You know why he called it very good? Because we have free will. Christ showed us what a human being can be when he uses his free will to align with God. Christ became the perfect human being. That's why he called us very good. That's why he's called the second Adam. We're supposed to be like Adam before the fall. We're supposed to be like Christ. Using our free will to choose him. Using our free will in the midst of suffering to have mercy on those who persecute us. That is very good. But if we didn't have that choice, there's nothing special about us. God desires personhood, not performance. All right, I'm going to wrap up real quick. Potential causes of suffering. The first one is the fall. We live in a fallen world, so we get sick. This body decays, it gets old, etc. We have a time frame. I want to talk about this, though. Natural disasters. How can you explain that? We talked about our free will brings evil, right? Like it makes sense. With your free will, you can choose to kill somebody and God won't interfere because he's loving and he has to allow you to do what you want. He can't override you. Then his love is compromised. So we can understand person-to-person crime? What about natural disasters? Earthquakes that kill people? What about floods that kill people? What free will was there? Even this has to do with free will. How we can't take a human being out of his context within the environment. What we do to the environment matters. We used to be in harmony with the environment. There used to be, even like indigenous people, right? They used to respect the environment that they're in, very much so. If there was an earthquake back then, so what? There is no skyscrapers. The ground shakes a little bit, who cares? We'll be fine. Yet we, through our free will, we build houses, we build towers, and then earthquakes, which are not bad, they just are a part of this world, become bad. You see what I'm saying there? Floods. For example, wetlands. You guys know what wetlands are? Originally, like previously, before we started building on wetlands, they were supposed to kind of serve as this buffer to protect us from floods, to absorb it and everything. We started building houses on wetlands, expanding. So now when a flood happens, people actually die. For the indigenous people, that didn't really happen as much as it does today. Viruses, sicknesses. We litter, we put stuff in the ocean, all these things, and then a virus comes out and we get sick. That's us using our free will again. It all circles back to us. Any suffering, any type of evil that we deem, it comes from us and our choices and what we do. That's what happens. Nature becomes dangerous because of the way we choose to act with it. It's not nature's fault. Nature is neither good nor bad. It just is. But when we interact with it in these different ways, that's when these things happen. All right. To wrap up, what do we do with suffering? What do we do with pain? Because it's not something that facts or historical facts will really cure or really help, right? Like I said, there's an emotional problem of evil, right? There's this emotional problem that has to do with hurt, with sadness. I miss my so-and-so, my loved one. It doesn't matter what you tell that person. It's not about belief or logic. It's deeper than that. And so what we do with this is found in Philippians chapter 4, verse 12 to 13. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secrets of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. We love the last part of the verse. We never actually look at the context. St. Paul is telling us, whether you're suffering or not, whether you're hungry or fed, whether you're poor or rich, you need to learn to be content with all things. Why? You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. St. Paul is saying, nothing in this world can take me away from my contentness, because I can do anything through Christ. No suffering, no evil, no whatever will take me away. And this is, as Christians, this is our superpower. This is what sets us aside from everybody else. Because everybody else, they're dealing with this problem of suffering. They're dealing with this problem of evil, and it breaks them. They go into, dark places, or they go into atheism or whatever. But for us, this is where we stand out. When we go through a hardship, when we go through a tough time, we are content. We go through it and we say, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. That's what it does. And now, my last point in this series for you guys, on the point of suffering and evil, going back to this, Jesus, he came to the blind person, and after this, he heals him. But if we look at John chapter 8 before that, he was just about to be grabbed by the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders because they were trying to stone him. And it says he escaped through them. In the midst of his suffering, that suffering, he's trying to preach to his loved ones. They're trying to kill him. He escaped through. And in the midst of his suffering, it says he stopped by to see this person. Immediately after he fled his persecution, he stopped by to another person suffering. And that is what Christ does for you. He cannot help but stop by and see you in your suffering and be with you in the midst of your suffering. He does not bring suffering into your life, but he cannot help but be with you when you suffer. He leaves everything to find you. That's what he did with this blind person. He didn't make him blind, yet when he came to him in his suffering, and that's what he does with you, all of us, at all times. He doesn't bring the suffering onto us, but he enters into our suffering, and he is there through it with us. That's what Emmanuel means. Emmanuel means God with us. God is with us at all times. So please, do not belittle our God and think he makes you suffer, to think that he's, oh no, he died for you. He enters into your suffering. He's with you through your suffering. That is what Christ does. And so that is the highlight of this series. We talked a lot, so much about facts and apologetics. I want y'all to take that away with you. Because after this, you're going to have suffering. Unfortunately, we live in this world. We have periods of good times. And what did I say? Be thankful. But suffering is just a part of this world. But never forget, Christ cannot help it but to enter into your suffering. Even if you try to push him, he can't help it but to pass by and stop by with you and say, my son, my daughter, I am near, I am here. Glory be to God for allowing us to start and conclude this series.